Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called I Will Be Next to the Main Character. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! The day has come when Sirius Hyperion, the younger brother of the current emperor, arrives in Duke Rhode's territory, somewhere in the north. Some may think that he's just an innocent child, but the truth is, he was born special. He is an illegitimate child, and the former emperor's discriminating behavior justifies it. The problem is, legend has it that the Hyperion family is mixed with wolf blood, and Sirius is the first one in 300 years. To make the story worse, this caused an upheaval within the empire, and the crown prince killed everyone who insisted on making Sirius the heir. By everyone, that means including the emperor. But strangely, he couldn't bear to kill Sirius. I mean, he's the manifestation of the wolf after 300 years. Who knows what tough luck awaits in the corner? And so, the crown prince hid Sirius in a cold place and persecuted him to death. But at the age of 10, he was banished and sent to the north where Duke Rhode lives with his children. Then, our dearest female lead of the story, who, despite being so young, seems to know him very well, is being bullied by her siblings. And here's how she introduces them one by one. The Duke of Rhode had 7 children. The first one went out hunting for demons alone in the middle of winter and died. But guess what? Her father didn't even bat an eye about it. I admit he's quite handsome, but he's just as terrible as the emperor. The second son died of poison, and the third daughter took her own life under the pressure of the Duke. The most anticipated child went away on his own, and the 6th one died at a younger age. All the deaths of his children were nothing to him, as if they weren't his own flesh and blood. All that's left is the 4th sister, Courtney, the 5th brother, Joseph, and the 7th, which is our lovely and cute female lead. That morning, her father tells him to get rid of useless feelings if they want to succeed on his throne. The reason why the emperor sent Sirius to this den of sociopaths and madmen is because he expects his brother to die out of the Duke's cruelty. Of course, Sirius, oops, too early to spill the beans. This cute little girl hasn't been paying attention to her siblings making fun of her and just walks away from them. Perfect behavior, little girl. Sorry, Courtney, your little sister's way too mature. Wait, did I say mature? She's only 10. Actually, she's from another world who had already read this novel in the sales department. She doesn't know how she ended up in the novel itself and is playing a role of no significant presence at all. But she's glad that she knows the future where Sirius fulfills his ambitions and puts everyone at his feet. Thanks to that, she just has to stay still and do nothing except stick next to the main character. Suddenly, she hears the familiar voice of a young child outside the room. It's Sirius. She panics on what to do, so she just keeps quiet, and when he's gone, she walks to the door to close it, but then someone grabs the doorknob and pulls it open. She then comes face to face with a handsome young boy with silver hair and purple eyes. Wow! He doesn't look terrifying at all! In fact, he's so cute! Her plan to live quietly is now doomed. Looking at him closely, he surely is a very handsome child. As time went by, his face killed more than 10 of his fiancés. For this reason, she shouldn't make a mistake. Suddenly, Sirius grabs her hand and compliments how she looks very pretty. I mean, he's not wrong, but bro is going straight for it. The little girl can't believe what she hears. Sirius keeps talking about how she looks like her father and asks for her name afterward. The girl, Elena Rhode, introduces herself. However, she's quite surprised that he knows a lot about her. On top of that, he didn't address her properly, just Elena. Suddenly, he takes a look in her room. It's just way too plain and dark, but she likes it the way it is now compared to her previous room. At this point, Elena's kind of hoping that he'll leave her alone. Facing her, he then exclaims that she's useless and walks away, leaving Elena sitting on the floor wondering what could be wrong with her. Walking away, Sirius thinks of her golden eyes, the best of Rhode's treasures. Aside from that, he keeps thinking about how she looks beautiful. Excuse me, young sir, you have to be sorry first before complimenting her again. But realizing how she also looks the most vulnerable, she's still useless to him. Shortly after, Duke Rhode introduces Sirius to everyone. Just then, Elena notices something very strange. This Rhodes' golden eyes can't be wrong, for it has the ability to read others' feelings. The golden eyes that were passed down for generations have the power to read people's emotions. The more golden the light is, the more powerful it becomes. Even now, Duke Rhode uses this ability. After a fierce competition, he became the head of the Rhode family. As Duke Rhode formally introduces himself as Sirius's teacher, Elena can't help but wonder how he has no emotional reactions at all. Suddenly, Courtney butts in the conversation. She really wants to be included in everything, and so the Duke leaves the rest to her. The moment he passes by Elena, he calls her useless. Elena trembles out of humiliation, and the reason why the Duke hates her is because of her eyes. Even among those who possess it, her eyes are unprecedented. In every angle, all they can see is golden. The perfect golden eye has the power to look at people's emotions. In fact, when the visible emotions touch the body, the eye can feel it. That's why when her eyes don't have any change in emotion, people doubt if it's real or not. Suddenly, Courtney picks a fight with Sirius. She likes the idea of hierarchy where she's always on top, like, duh, sit down, girl. Even if Sirius is out of the Emperor's protection, you shouldn't speak to him like a slave. Elena is so curious to know what's going to happen, but on second thought, it's better to leave unnoticed. However, she senses that someone's following her. Courtney's fuming with anger as Sirius walks away from her. Elena senses the bright red aura, the emotion of rage surrounding her sister. Courtney then turns everything for the worse, pointing fingers at Elena and trying to put her in a tight situation. To them, she's just an insect, not even part of the so-called hierarchy that they only created to flatter themselves. Clearly, the Duke told Courtney not to mess with Elena, but she's determined to get rid of her eyeballs. Is it jealousy because of Elena's eyes? I mean, they are being treated well, unlike Elena, who always suffers from her father's cruelty. And so, out of habit, she tends to close her eyes to protect the golden treasure she has. She never wanted it in the first place, so whenever she saw that someone hated her, her body would act up in pain. This time, Sirius can no longer bear seeing Elena trembling in fear, so he speaks up, asking how Courtney speaks impolitely to him. That's right, Sirius. Show them who's the real deal. Elena can now sense an emotion from Sirius. Her eyes can feel that he's a bit annoyed. On top of that, he's able to throw off Courtney just like that. Now that she gets the treatment she gives to other people, she looks embarrassed. Just then, Sirius grabs her arm and walks away. This time, Elena got away from her siblings with the help of Sirius, but she still wants to spend time alone in the attic to avoid further conflicts. However, Sirius keeps following her around. Though she doesn't want to talk to him at first, she has no choice but to do it because she can't let him follow her into her room. And so, she turns around and asks him by surprise. His eyes reveal how shocked he is. It's kinda cute because he seems like a 10-year-old boy now. But well, our little boy already knows where she's going, and he will definitely follow her. Elena taps her feet on the floor, indicating how frustrated and stressed she is. Suddenly, Sirius starts emitting a joyous aura and ends up laughing at her. Who knew that the Sirius Hyperion knew how to laugh? Even more frustrated with this, Elena stomps her feet up the stairs only to be ashamed of herself when Sirius opens the door to his room, the lowest rank one. To be exact, they're neighbors. Elena's face shows how embarrassed she is, so she goes inside after a short farewell. Before Sirius entered his room, he didn't fail to wish her a good night's sleep too. In her room, she's dying in embarrassment. I mean, who wouldn't? She was so frustrated that he kept following her, only to find out that he was merely going in the same direction as her. Thinking about her father's lack of reasonable care, it's still not quite right to have a guy next to his daughter's room. Relax, Elena, you're both 10 years old. Nothing will happen, right? Right? And so the way Courtney acted earlier about how the Duke told her not to threaten Elena's life only means that he just needs the golden eyes. Well, he never treated her right from the start. In her past life, Elena was deaf but was still able to read. That was how she knew about the story of Sirius Hyperion, but before she got to the end of the novel, she was reincarnated as Duke Rhode's youngest daughter. The Duke is notorious for his atrociousness. Seeing him face to face surely made Elena wonder why she was born into that messy family. In the novel, Sirius was a perfect male lead who acted upon his role to defeat everyone. The required characteristic of a mass-market main character is malice. Also, he was too cruel to follow a romantic path, so there wasn't a female lead. His goal was to be the strongest in the world, destroying Duke Rhode himself when he tried to take advantage of him and insisting on his fourth daughter for marriage. Even though it was a bad ending, the process was also satisfying. Duke Rhode raised Sirius brilliantly like a lunatic. He was a terrible madman after all, but when he saw Elena for the first time, he smiled and uttered the word, perfect. He even named the child and instructed the servants to give her everything without lacking proper care. Strange, isn't it? the madman in the novel was giving her special care, visiting and playing with her every single day. At first, she thought that was a change in the plot twist, making her the main character of the story. However, one day, the Duke instructed everyone to get out of the room, and the usual hazy white mist around her father was changed to a raging red with black smoke. Poor baby Elena shivers in fear. She wanted to run, but she still hoped that somehow her father would pat her head and brush her hair. But the Duke reached for her neck instead and choked her. What? Before she lost consciousness, she heard him saying that she might run away first upon knowing that she possessed the golden eyes. Ever since then, there have been tests she had to undergo to assess the authenticity of her eyes. Until she realized the nature of her ability, she constantly smiled despite the threats because she was scared to admit that the father, who used to care for her, was no longer that kind of person. And seeing Sirius's radiant light of pure joy earlier, it surely felt like ages ago since she'd seen something like that. Everything is pointless. The Duke clearly wants the golden eyes and not her, but she has to endure it a bit longer. Sirius will soon end everyone's life, including hers anyway. Suddenly, she hears a sound of crying from the other room where Sirius is occupying. So after all the brave face, he still cries himself to sleep when nobody's watching. The question is, what is making him cry? Elena contemplates whether to comfort him or just follow her plan to do nothing. She can't mess up with the story, but Sirius is the only one she can talk to, just for comfort. And so she opens the door to see him. No one will ever know if she consoles him. But still, she shouldn't do anything that might jeopardize the whole plan. If the Rhode family is to go down smoothly, there should be no change in Sirius's heart. They're not even that close for her to be going there and comforting him. That night, she ends up resisting the urge to get up and visit him. And so she didn't get a wink of sleep because of worry in some random dream where she was attacked by a monster. Rationally, it's a waste of energy to worry since Sirius is the main character who will pave his future better than anyone else. When she opens the door to eat breakfast, she's too frightened to see Sirius sitting on the window, waiting for her to come out. Elena has this habit of doubting that she feels like she's not that confident that people would really think of her nicely. Poor little girl. Sirius just keeps looking at her without saying anything. Let's admit, he looks cute with that poker face even though she can just see through him. Elena decides to just ignore him, but Sirius starts asking if she slept well. Obviously, she didn't, but she doesn't want to admit it. So now she's getting delusional that after crying all night, he became kinder when he woke up. That isn't possible. However, he looks really happy, so she assumes that he just cried in his dreams. Elena proceeds to the dining room, and Sirius, as always, follows her. It's been a day since they met, but he looks more handsome in her eyes. Even his hair is still puffed up from waking up, and he's smaller than her. In no time, he'll be taller than her, but it can't be helped to admire how cute he is right now. Elena opens the door to the dining hall where everyone has already eaten and left. In the Rhode family, Elena has to wait for everyone to finish eating before digging in with the leftover food. Really, she'd care less if this family would crumble down one day. She just has to trust Sirius with it. Suddenly, Elena smells a familiar dish. It's been a long time since something decent was left. Sirius tries to stop her from going to the kitchen, but it turns out that even if she waits all day, no one will come to serve. And so, she shows him how to prepare her own breakfast without the help of servants. Sirius exclaims that he likes how simple it is. Of course, Elena can't believe why he isn't even complaining about it knowing that he's of royal blood. Just when she's about to eat, she notices that he is just staring at her without even lifting the spoon. She's so hungry right now, but how can she eat when someone's looking at her like that? My God, say something! Elena finally understands why he'd always stare at her without saying a word. It's like he's waiting for her to greet him before saying it back. OMG, I think it all started when she greeted him with a good night's sleep first. OMG, he's so cute. But why is he so worked up with waiting for her greeting in the first place? Elena's starting to imagine him as a greeting fairy. Surely with that cute face, he can pull it off given the sunlight on his silver hair. But even so, he's still a young beast who will soon make others pay for what they have done to him, unlike her who still keeps clinging to others. No, don't talk like that, little girl. Can't wait for the time when he'll protect her just like how he threw off Courtney the last time she pointed fingers at Elena. Still, she's worried why he cried last night. However, he suddenly stands and leaves her wondering why he didn't greet her back. Shortly after, Elena watches from the balcony how Sirius takes up his first day of training. In her defense, she's just bored and wants something worth watching. No other special reasons, that's just it. Way too defensive about it, Elena. Relax. But there's nothing she can do aside from getting bored out of doing absolutely nothing. After the Duke has deprived her of his affection, everyone expected that she was going to die soon, but unlike her sixth brother, whom he just let die of the cold, he immediately summoned a doctor to treat her. Even the servants were confused about this and didn't know how they should behave around Elena, and so they ended up with the conclusion of treating her like a ghost. And being a living ghost, she's always bored. Back to the training, Sirius is doing pretty well with swords even with that small body. Given that he possesses broad vision compared to a normal human, who has no beastly intuition, there's no doubt that he's already a monster. But is he really a monster? Suddenly, the Duke stops him, disappointed in his performance, and so he instructs his men to bring the counter, a sword practice tool that's way harder to handle. The Duke swings his sword and he hits the target in a flash. His moves are so flawless and his speed is highly incredible. When it is Sirius's time to try, he manages to control his strength and hit the target. However, the Duke calls him ignorant for such an amazing performance already. What is wrong with it? Suddenly, he approaches Sirius, about to do something that triggers Elena's trauma. Elena falls back, losing the strength all over her body the moment Duke Rhode raises his hands. If she had known that it would come to this, she would never have come out to watch. For how many years of violence from her father, it's scary to witness it being done to someone else. No! Don't you dare, Duke! Her trembling hands cover her ears as she goes back inside her room, repeating the words that she doesn't want to get hit anymore, let alone tremble like a beaten pup. That night, she regrets why she didn't eat at all. Also, she hasn't heard him back yet, but she's sure that he'll be fine. That's according to the book. Whatever the punishment, Sirius will never waver. So she just has to worry about herself. However, she heard a loud thud from Sirius's room, followed by a tormenting groan. Even if she can't see him, she knows exactly what situation he's in now. In the novel, the Emperor put a bounty on Sirius's head and even permitted Duke of Rhode if he wanted to kill him. He's now agonizing in so much pain that it bothers her more. She can't take it anymore. She has to help him, but she's also worried that Sirius won't be able to achieve victory if she butts in the story. But he's suffering so much and she definitely can't let him die. To justify what she's about to do, she convinces herself that Sirius is her insurance, the only shot of protection she might have in the future. There's nothing scarier than becoming acquainted with Sirius like this because he's not in his right mind. He's also very cautious of people who want to help him. Still, she takes a little peek to check if he's okay. But when she moves further inside, she doesn't expect him to turn out like that. His small body is shaking as he tries to get a hold of his aching shoulders. He is covered in dirt and bruises are all over his body. He is in such bad shape that he can no longer respond. How did the Duke treat him so heartlessly? Luckily, Elena has some spare medicine. She has to hurry, or else she will have a massive loss of insurance. There's no time to lose. Elena has quite a bit of a frantic search for medicine to help the fever-stricken prince. She rushes back to Sirius, who is unfortunately still apparently unconscious. Nonetheless, with the sole thought of making sure her only insurance towards a life without her family wouldn't die, Elena goes into full nursing mode. However, she still makes sure that the injured prince would not wake up during her treatments, to save them from awkwardness, of course. The youngest Rhode child pushes Sirius so that he can lie on his back, and she finally manages to see the extent of the damage that her family, particularly her father, can inflict on someone. It seems every part of the young prince's body has some sort of injury, if not bruises. And to make matters worse, he also has a burning fever. Poor Sirius. Duke Rhode has gone too far. How could he hurt a little child? Karma is coming to you, you vile creature. Even his hands had some bruises from handling swords. And so Elena sets about trying to make his temperature go down by first wiping his body with a cold, wet towel. But the poor Sirius, despite being unconscious, flinches from Elena's treatment, indicating that he's enduring a lot of pain. Regardless, taking care not to do harm than what is necessary, Elena succeeds in making Sirius drink medicine for fever and disinfecting his wounds for the most part. Soon enough, the prince's temperature goes down, and by this time, he looks like an angel sleeping, as if no pain or hurt has ever come his way. His hands, however, tell another story. Battered, bruised, and swollen, they don't fit Sirius's peaceful look as of the moment. As Elena is applying balms that could help bring the swelling down of the prince's hands, she notices him crying again, making her think about Sirius and his supposed role to play in the novel she's in. Elena can't seem to fathom that someone who is destined to become a cruel person, someone cold enough to resist the bad environment of her house, someone as determined as he is, would cry. She notices, though, that he only does so when he's alone, and all she can think about is how young and innocent the supposed main character is as of this moment. In a rather sweet gesture, Elena reaches for his hands in order to help with the tears, and resides by his bedside for just a bit more. Anyway, the next morning comes, and with it, the same routine of Sirius waiting for Elena to come out of her room. She notices him acting a bit out of character, asking questions about her sleep more so than usual. But then again, she's confident there's no way he was awake through all of that last night. But still, regardless of the fact, he again falls silent, and even though she suspects that he might be a devil because of how fast he recovers. Although he's still admittedly a bit wobbly when walking, Elena feels relieved nonetheless that the prince is okay. Relief is evidenced by perhaps one of the most genuinely happy smiles that she has made in a long while. Aww, I hope their relationship develops even more from now on. Elena's happiness doesn't last as long as it should have, though, as soon after, they again take their breakfast in relative silence. The girl thinks to herself about how worried she was about him just moments before, but as it seems, nothing special is going to happen anyway. In fact, he doesn't even utter a single word as she serves him food, making Elena wonder if he's just planning on ignoring her again. However, almost as if he can hear her mind, as soon as Elena finishes the thought in her head, Sirius suddenly speaks, asking her to come with him after she's done eating. He doesn't give any further explanation, though, and walks away calmly, even after Elena suddenly asks what that was about. So, of course, this leaves the young girl more confused, if anything. As of the moment, actually, Elena admits to herself how she doesn't want to follow him. But then again, she's left with no choice. He's your insurance, right? But whatever place she had expected him to bring her, it seems she was still shocked that he brought her to a shooting range for archery practice. To be more specific, Sirius brought her there to wait until he was finished. The girl, not wanting to waste away her efforts the night before by suddenly being mean to the young prince, merely asks to sit under the shade of the trees as she waits for him, even though she really wants to refuse. But it seems it's because she's more anxious about the arrival of her father in that training area than anything else. Her father, who as of late, is still engulfed in that suffocating black aura. Nevertheless, at least Elena gets to experience a bit of peace as she sits in the lovely shade of the trees, illuminated by golden lights. There, she thinks of how Sirius's stare, like it did the first time they met, is filled with the notion that concludes that she's useless. Still, it seems that pain has long since been endured by the youngest child of the Rhode family, and Elena thinks it affects her no more. Besides, her plan as of now is still underway, with her silently waiting for its fruition. Drowsiness manages to catch up on her after a while, simply because of how little she got due to last night's good deed. Elena begins to drift to sleep with the surroundings befitting her with calming smells, until suddenly, the scent of blood reaches her nose. She opens her eyes, only to find the young prince covered head to toe with blood. Naturally, Elena gets nervous about him, even considering that he might be injured again, though she sees his aura is more excited than anything else. That nervousness extends even further as he offers a hand to her, which she takes. Unfortunately, she's so flustered about the entire thing that she also starts acting fidgety. And in a moment of complete disarray, she says that she'd like to pat his head in praise as Sirius asks her what's wrong. Like a child who's done a good job and asks for validation for it, Sirius looks Elena in her eyes and with the tiniest hint of happiness in his smile, asks her to hurry up and praise him. How can he look so adorable? He's covered in blood, for God's sake. Shock is what initially creeps in Elena after what Sirius said. How such an affectionate smile could ever come from a face covered in blood is the only thought running through her head at this point. But nonetheless, she still reaches out her hand and pats the young prince on the head. The nervousness didn't dissipate, however, and Elena is even left wondering whether or not the prince even enjoys his request because of his expression reverting to his usual stoic demeanor. Fortunately, the silence is broken by Sirius himself, who asks if Elena has seen what has just happened. Apparently, he has skipped training lessons because of a clearly biased knight assigned to teach him, and so he decided to train by fighting a monster the knight of the Rhode family had captured. What? That's dangerous! He won, of course, explaining his bloody appearance, though this did not help much about Elena's opinion of him as someone destined for bloodshed. But more importantly, Elena finds Sirius staring intently at her again. What is his problem? If you have something to say, little prince, you better speak up, Sirius. This time, Perhaps with a sense of need, the prince's tender eyes gaze upon her, until they don't. As abruptly as he has looked at her, Sirius stands up and walks away without another word. And Elena, though left wondering about what it was the prince had been waiting for, was glad enough to be back in her room and left alone. What a mood. We do need our peace. But actually, she is just happy that her supposed crime of helping the prince remains undiscovered by Sirius himself. That is, until a few days later, she finds herself back inside his room and Sirius in a worse condition than before. Apparently, the Duke of Rhode had been impressed with the growth of the young prince in swordsmanship, and so had asked his son Joseph to spar with him. Unfortunately, anxiety and fear of losing his standing with his father made Joseph attack prior to the countdown. And although Sirius manages to dodge, his sword manages to chip him near the side of his stomach. The Duke ends the fight with praises for Sirius and punishment for Joseph, but unfortunately, the Duke's son ensures no doctor will come to Sirius's aid. What is wrong with these people? Gosh, especially the Duke! You're traumatizing these kids for no reason. You're really gonna get what's coming for you. And so, Elena sets about trying to correct the bandages on his wounds until Sirius grabs her by the arm, showing that he's been awake the entire time. Those piercing blue eyes are enough for Elena to be frozen in her place as Sirius grabs hold of her hand. Despite him being the one who's bloodied in his own bed, ironically, Elena is the one who's panicking. Perhaps even without his hands gripping tightly on hers, she might still be too scared to move just by the way he stares. The first comprehensible thought that runs through Elena's head is, again, to run away. But Sirius won't let go. He asks what all this is about. However, the frantic Elena can't come up with a good excuse explaining her presence in his room. She tries to run away again, but this time, the young prince pulls on her arm, much to her distress, knowing that much force will send her toppling on his bed as well. And sure enough, Sirius manages to position the youngest Rhode daughter right on top of him, their faces merely inches away. At first, Elena finds relief at not making the prince's wounds worsen by being on top of him, but as their faces draw closer still, she finally becomes aware of the awkward situation. Awkward indeed. Racking her brain for excuses, unfortunately, all that comes to her mind is covering Sirius's eyes and telling him that all this was a dream. Not her proudest moment, I reckon. But still, the prince manages a smile at Elena's attempt at an explanation, despite being injured at that. Though one will never guess that depending on the innocence that lingers on the young boy's smile. He laughs again at Elena, frantically explaining how all this would be gone in the morning, but eventually, he loosens his grip and drifts to sleep. Elena then tries to return to her own room, but after a moment of frantic thinking, decides to help Sirius again, so that one day, he can bring down the Rhode family and allow her much sought-after escape. Besides, with her golden eyes, she can see whether or not Sirius has become the evil man he's apparently destined to be. But the funny thing about life is that, as Elena herself soon discovers, they don't always go as planned. Immediately after waking up from her eventful evening, Elena again thinks about her plans to run away, even considering the notion that the prince can't kill her right away now if he turns into the bloodthirsty hero of the novel, so she still has a lot of time. But as she opens the door, the smell of blood immediately hits her nose. She looks up, only to see Sirius sitting on the window with blood dripping from his bandaged wound. What's more curious? He has a big smile on his face. The prince's upbeat attitude leaves Elena at a loss, simply because she sees his smile is as genuine as any because of his warm aura. Nonetheless, Sirius motions them to go to breakfast, but all the girl can think about is how she can't understand such a boy with that much resilience and a rather unstable mental state. Seems a rather harsh reaction to someone being nice, but okay. Anyway, her confidence from before that she can detect changes in his attitude doesn't seem as strong as it was before. And for better or for worse, she's now stuck with an uncharacteristically happy Sirius. A prince who keeps on matching her stride as they walk and who asks whether or not she has something to say. Sirius is even the one to pour the bean soup on their plates and even says bon appetit first before their meal. All of that adds more to Elena's confusion, as even if Sirius considers the night before as a dream, it still doesn't explain why he's so nice. Just as she thinks that she's lost her appetite, a knock is suddenly heard from the room. Apparently, the Duke had ordered steaks for the prince because of his previous improvements. Elena tries to control herself and only focus on her meals, but again, Sirius is the one to give her a cut from the meat reserved for him. And with a smile as he observes the girl being happy from the taste, Sirius suddenly reveals that apparently Elena had appeared in his dreams. This sends the girl thinking about pretending, but she decides to play it safe and ask more about it. A wise move, seeing as he admits that it has happened more than once, and in fact, in one of those dreams, she held his hand through the night. The prince doesn't give out that much information about it afterward, though, much to Elena's annoyance. Actually, she's so bothered that the prince thinks that every emotion she feels is clearly written on her face. Just before, he also thinks that what he wants comes true, along with perhaps the second smile he has done today with the purest and most innocent happy aura. For now, we look into the story so far in the eyes of the young Prince Sirius. All those days ago, a golden carriage from the capital came riding into the Duke of Rhode's palace. On it, the bubbly eyes of Sirius, who peeks at his new home, are filled with hope. For the first time, he has escaped the vile clutches of the royal family and its castle. For the first time, he is not in the presence of his terrifying older brother, nor is he faced with poisonous food. So now, in a new chapter of his life, the boy has started to dream. That, perhaps, is a life where he can wake up to good mornings where meals are eaten together with his peers, sleep fairly comfortably, and even receive good nights. So essentially, Sirius longs for a normal life. Unfortunately, he soon discovers upon meeting Duke Rhode that such a life is impossible. He may have escaped the royal palace, but it's still the same thing in the Duke's mansion. Everyone had malice in their eyes, and so the young Sirius is forced to repel hostility with hostility. Poor child. At least, that was his plan until just by chance, he met a girl. A girl who, despite being the one who perfectly fit the description of a Rhode, did not act like one. At first, he enjoys teasing the girl because even if he laughs and giggles, no one can tell due to his expressionless face. However, Elena does manage to squeeze a reaction out of him, unbeknownst to her, of course. It turns out that when Elena greeted him goodnight, one of his dreams had come true in spite of him giving up, making him cry in silence in his room. Ugh, my heart aches for him. But the memory of his supposed moment of weakness jolts him back to the present, where Sirius sees Elena being upset. Though she says it's nothing, Elena can see the change from a happy aura to a depressing blue color enveloping the prince. For someone with the ability to read people's hearts, Elena admits that she really doesn't know what he's thinking. In order to escape the awkwardness of the situation and to wash down all she ate before she gets sick, Elena decides to drink water. But preoccupied as she was, she unexpectedly began choking and started coughing. Perhaps what is most unexpected is that Sirius moved swiftly to be by her side in order to check up on her. Elena is shocked with how quickly the prince moved, but nonetheless manages to say she's fine. But Sirius won't let the topic drop that fast, asking follow-up questions as to what might have caused Elena to choke and whether or not she's sick. With his purple eyes that now seem as soft as puppy eyes staring straight at her, Elena finds it strange yet again that the prince actually seems worried about her. Although he nonchalantly comments that she really is weak, to which Elena replies that she's born that way, but still, it's pretty normal. Those words seem to hit Sirius as he looks down and checks his already healing wounds because of his wolf blood. But in his eyes, despite viewing Elena as perhaps the weakest he's ever seen, he notes that her attempts to help him make it all the better as he stares intently at her. So there really is a deeper meaning when he calls her weak, and it's not just a term for berating. Anyway, Sirius admits in his mind that he was in fact aware of Elena helping him get through those hard nights. And although he already knew from living a harsh life that kindness does not happen without reason, he seems to think that Elena is the sole exception as he recalls her holding his hand as they sleep. Perhaps the spark of what will be a raging fire of love, maybe? The prince did leave a little clue that indicates he knew of Elena's kind acts by saying she should take the medicine stocked in her room. She starts to panic naturally, but before she can act on her thoughts to run away, Sirius invites her to watch him train. And with a smile at that, of course. And so Elena finds herself waiting by the forest where she unexpectedly stumbles upon Joseph, who due to his punishment is wearing a squire's attire. Joseph tries to intimidate his youngest sister, but soon discovers that his tactics don't work, and Elena has only frozen due to the arrival of Sirius. Himself being surprised at the arrival of what he thought was an injured prince, Joseph inadvertently places a hand on Sirius's shoulder. As a prince, a menacing aura emanates from Sirius as he asks who gave permission to Joseph to touch him. In response, Joseph raises his hand, trying to land a strike on the young prince. But before the situation can develop further, the Duke of Rhode arrives, his stares as cold as ice. Just one word from the Duke of Rhode himself is enough to freeze the children. As Elena notes, the Duke may have a calm tone to his voice, but she still prefers to not be in her father's presence. She doesn't blame Sirius, though, knowing that the boy himself was oblivious too. And speaking of the devil, Sirius himself steps in between the Duke's gaze and Elena, who has shriveled in her father's presence. The young prince decides to take action on the whole situation, saying that the commotion was just him asking Joseph a question. Unfortunately, the Duke seems to find this amusing and proceeds to grill his son about the whole thing. Much like Elena, Joseph shies away from their father, and in light of the Duke's dominating presence, he's forced to lie about his encounter with the prince. Nevertheless, the Duke smiles, and as Elena sees through her golden eyes, the aura around her father is more about curiosity and interest than anger. And yet still, he asks Joseph to follow him, leaving both Elena and Sirius to their discretion. But as soon as Elena is left alone to her own thoughts, Sirius grabs her hand and leads her out. In her mind, though she'd like to ask where they'll go, it seems that she catches herself thinking that the thought of Sirius actually calms her down. Despite his not being able to block the Duke's voice or even his gaze, he still stepped in front of Elena, indicating the want to help. This won't be nice in terms of the future Elena is sure to happen, however. But still, Sirius leads her back to the house and asks where she'd like to go at this time. Elena automatically answers the library, but still tries to push away Sirius so that they won't spend the whole day together by implying she wants to be alone as she browses the books. Unfortunately, all her plans crumble in the face of Sirius's cute, puppy-like face when he asks if he could at least wait outside. Once Elena is alone in the library, she comes to her senses. Why is she such a weak person persuaded by a cute face? Well, that's saying something. She paces back and forth, questioning her sanity. No matter how cute Sirius is, she has to keep herself together because no matter how puppy-like he is now, he will grow up and destroy the whole empire. In the novel, Sirius has had many unwanted engagements because of the Emperor. The women he's encountered were all captivated by his appearance, from his finances to even his assassin. There wasn't a time that this man had not been ugly, just like how a male lead is supposed to be. However, this doesn't justify him being this cute when he was younger. It simply isn't fair. Since she's in the library anyway, she decides to skim through books, and she takes her time. Surely, Sirius didn't wait for her that long, right? Even though she doesn't want to be involved with him, she still checks on him like a decent human being. Unfortunately, a familiar voice calls out to her, and it only means trouble. Joseph, with a dark aura around him, approaches her menacingly. After being called by their father, Elena is sure that he is in a horrid mood. This creature, Joseph, hands her an elongated object covered by a black cloth, instructing her to give it to Sirius. He tells her that it's supposed to be from their father. When she asks what it is, he loses his temper, calling her a worm for questioning him. What an entitled brat! This kid is the embodiment of everything vile. Ugh! He is about to hit her with the object when a hand stops it. Sirius has come, and his eyes say it all. He's pissed. She looks at the boy, and she notices that his cheeks are red, and she wonders why. Sirius turns to her and apologizes for coming in even though she told him to wait outside. This only makes Elena feel guilty. She is about to touch his head, but he beats her to it, touching her head and telling her to wait. Chaos begins at this point. Sirius turns to Joseph, who's leaving, and throws the long object at him. Joseph refuses to apologize, and Sirius is not having it. With his purple eyes glinting viciously, he kicks the kid twice his size. That is when Elena realizes that Sirius is blushing because he's excited to be violent. Joseph, for his part, is too prideful to show that he was hurt. And like the little menace that he is, Sirius merely tells him to endure it better next time, which enrages Joseph. He is about to attack him, but Sirius grabs his wrist. That is the moment that Joseph learns how much strength is in this little boy's body. He desperately tells him to let go, afraid that he will break his wrist. With a smirk on his face, Sirius does not let up. Rather, he uses his hold on him to throw him against the bookshelf. This kid is vicious, but serves you right, Joseph, for being such a nasty bully. Sirius is fuming because he almost hurt Elena, a person whom he believes is only for him. Such a bold declaration there, Sirius. Are you sure that Elena is aware of that? Without remorse, he continues to beat Joseph up, even stepping on his wrist. The boy on the floor is aghast that this kid is hurting him so ferociously, yet his face is void of any emotions. Are you even human, Sirius? Joseph attempts to apologize, but Sirius mischievously declares that he doesn't need his apology, and that's it. Before he can truly break the boy's wrist, he looks back at Elena only to see that she is huddled on the ground, pale and shaking. Without a second thought, Sirius rushes to her, thinking that she's hurt. Turns out, Elena is not strong enough to see violence in front of her. Sirius takes her hand and checks on her. Elena then realizes that Sirius did those things because he's trying to help her. So even if she is scared, she still explains that she's fine, getting rid of Sirius's worries. He tells her how weak she is and proceeds to carry her on his back. How strong is this kid? Elena is beside herself. She feels like dying out of awkwardness. However, she still feels warm with him, and before she knows it, she falls asleep. She only wakes when they reach her room. He puts her down and she realizes that she hasn't thanked him yet, so she bows her head and expresses her gratitude. Sirius is relieved that she is no longer pale, and proving just how clueless he is, he asks her if he should go back and break Joseph's wrist. Like, it's the most normal thing in the world. Elena, not wanting to see any more bloodshed, tells him that her brother has had enough. Before Elena can enter her chambers, Sirius stops her. He then asks her to accompany him to see the master. Why does Sirius suddenly want to talk with her father? Seeing that she is hesitating, he holds out his hand for her, saying that if she is afraid, she can take it and they will go together. I still don't understand what is going on in his head, but he is such a sweetheart to her. Elena doesn't want to go, but Sirius is determined to go even if she doesn't come. Elena doesn't want him to go alone either, so even though she knows she'll regret it, she goes with him. Meanwhile, the Duke and Courtney are talking about how Joseph was beaten up by Sirius. The Duke is disappointed that even though Joseph has been taught by him, he is still bested. The Duke throws a candle, almost missing Courtney. She flinches but wills herself to not be scared. She needs her father's favor if she is to be his heir. To her surprise, the Duke declares that he'd rather have Sirius as his son since he possesses a natural talent. Wow! Father of the Year, ladies and gentlemen. Way to go, Mr. Evil Duke! He thinks that it is a waste to kill him, even if it is ordered by the Emperor. Now that he has the wolf descendant in his care, there is no better time to act than now. He wants to make Sirius part of the Rhodes household through marriage. At that moment, Prince Sirius and Elena come to see him. He dismisses Courtney, and he lets the two children in. The two greet him respectfully, and he observes how Sirius looks at him without fear. Meanwhile, he can only feel disgusted when he looks at Elena. Grr, this guy! No matter how handsome you are still vile for treating Elena like this. The prince came to claim his reward from earlier. Apparently, the Duke has promised to give him whatever he likes after coming to training on time despite his injuries. The boy looks at him straight in the eyes and declares that he wants Elena by his side every time he studies. The Duke is silent, staring at the two children's entwined hands. He smirks, knowing that rather than a political marriage, a marriage due to affection will ensure that Sirius will be entangled with House Rhodes. Elena will finally be useful, and killing her real father will finally be worth it. I'm sorry, what? What did you just say, sir? 10 years ago, Hugo Rhodes was looking at the broken Linus Rhodes, who was locked in a cell. He found it unpleasant to be looking at someone who looked so much like him, suffering like that. They were half-brothers, but they looked so similar that you may think they were identical twins. However, unlike him, Linus always had a smile on his face. He told the poor creature in the cell that his child had been born. With a sad smile on his face, Linus told his brother that he promised Stacy that he would name their child Elena. The House of Rhodes had a rule that illegitimate children were not allowed to carry bloodlines to prevent the scattering of power. However, Linus breaks this rule by falling in love with a maid named Stacy. They ran away, and the only reason that they were caught was because Stacy was pregnant. After capturing Linus, they threw him in a cell and broke his legs. You horrible people! The child was born with perfect golden irises, so Hugo decided to claim her as his own daughter. In order to do so, there should be no birth parents. Now that Stacy was gone after giving birth to the child, he suggested to Linus that he would take Elena as his daughter, so she wouldn't suffer being an illegitimate child, but Linus had to die. Without hesitation, Linus agrees. Also, his daughter can live. Oh my God! My heart goes out to him. Poor Linus, and now poor Elena, who ended up with this monster. And so Hugo ran his sword through his own brother, calling him stupid when Linus thanked him. That is because he is a much better person than you. And so Elena grew up as his daughter, a child with perfect golden eyes. Those eyes were supposed to have the ability to see not just emotions, but the future as well. However, no matter what he did, the child was just a disappointment. He even threatened her life, but the child merely suffered. Grr, you will really get what's coming for you. However, at present, this so-called useless child has managed to attract Sirius. So with a devious smile, he allows the two to study together. Elena has to prepare herself for what's to come because of that thing that happened yesterday. On their way back from the Duke's office, Sirius confessed something to her. He actually can't read. He's a prince, for God's sake. Why didn't anyone teach a child how to read? Hearing this shocks Elena so much that she exclaims loudly. She now sees the evidence of how Sirius has been treated in the Imperial Palace, causing her heart to sink. He wants her to teach him before the tutors arrive. She knows that she has to refuse. She desperately wants to refuse, but in the end, she can't say no to him. That's why she finds herself with him in her room early in the morning, the only place they won't be disturbed. She has to teach him fast and not care about him after this. He suddenly calls her teacher Elena and nearly gives her a heart attack. However, she is uncomfortable with this. When she tells him, he pretends to be sulking, but she can tell that he is making fun of her. He then suggests that they call each other casually instead. Since it is better than him using honorifics with her, she reluctantly agrees. So when she calls him by his name, he brightens like the sun. Ah, so cute! A bit manipulative, but he is so adorable. Meanwhile, Elena doesn't understand why she likes being casual with him. When evening arrives, they decide to end their study session. She notices that Sirius seems like a genius considering how he managed to understand and memorize everything easily. There is a question that's been bugging her for some time. She asks him why he is suddenly being nice to her. He answers that it's because she is nice to him too. She is about to deny it, but he tells her not to bother. He knows about everything she did for him. This behavior of his is strange to her because Sirius in the original story has always been suspicious of people. But she seems to be the exception. She praises him when she sees him bringing books to study on his own. He tells her that it is proof that she taught him hard, and that means that she'll become a useful person someday. He emphasizes that if she wants to survive, she has to be useful. When he leaves, Elena laments that she still can't figure him out. She then notices a note stuck in her book. The handwriting is messy, and it is obviously from Sirius, telling her that they must have a good day tomorrow too. Since spending time with Sirius, Elena has learned that he can do cute things sometimes, but he acts crazy the next moment. At this point, her life is becoming increasingly difficult, so she needs to make a different strategy to survive. Sirius seems to think that Elena is on his side. The thing is, she doesn't think she'll live long if she's next to him. So to discourage Sirius from spending time with her, she'll make herself as useless as possible. The next time they are together, she asks Sirius to play house with her, thinking that he wants no part in such a childish game. Well, I have a feeling that this will not end as you expect, little Elena. However, she is taken aback when he doesn't know what it is. So she explains that they will pretend that they are a married couple. And so Elena demonstrates how to play it. So the two of them pretend to be married, and Elena even calls him honey. This endearment makes Sirius blush adorably, and he promptly follows her lead, using the sweet nickname as well. Aw, how precious! Sirius is certainly enjoying being affectionate with someone. Eventually, the two end up lying on the mat with their hands entwined. Elena tells him that when they open their eyes, the game is over. To her surprise, Sirius tells her that the game is fun and that he wants to do it again. Elena's heart suddenly starts beating like crazy, and she remembers that he let her call him honey. How can she let someone who will kill more than 10 of his fiancés in the future call her honey? At this point, she is questioning if she really values her own life. She decides that she'll play in the field the next time. Later on, when Sirius is not with her, she decides to pay Joseph a visit. Her brother is in pretty bad shape after taking a beating from Sirius. Joseph looks at her with contempt, asking why she is there. She tells him that she wants an apology. He apologizes, but she asks him if he is really sincere. He angrily turns away, saying that it doesn't matter if he did. She tells her brother that he has received enough punishment. She knows that if Sirius notices his phony apology, for his sake, he better apologize properly. Teary-eyed, Joseph faces her again, asking if he will really be forgiven if he's sorry from the bottom of his heart, and if she will leave him alone. Looking at Joseph now, she can't help but internal panic that he is crying now. Seeing him like this makes her realize that he is just a child. She reminds him to be careful about what he does from then on because she will not let him off the hook so easily next time. He agrees with her, and for the second time, he apologizes. This time around, it sounds genuine. Later on, Elena goes to their spot in the forest that Sirius calls the house. When she arrives, Sirius faces her with a bright smile, obviously happy to see her. She sees that he has been writing with a stick, and she notices how much his handwriting has improved. She sees that he has written her name as well, but that he has gotten his wrong. She corrects it for him, but seeing his bright smile, she realizes that he did it on purpose. He explains that he likes seeing her write his name. Aww, for someone destined to cause so much destruction, he sure is sweet to our little Elena. Elena takes note that he is so happy and that he is slowly moving closer. Before she knows it, he kisses her cheek. Her face instantly turns red, and rather than acknowledge what he did, he merely asks her what she plans to play. He even implies that he wants to play house again. It is incredibly hard for her to resist him, but she has to appear to be useless to him. She announces that she wants to watch the ants. He is confused, of course, because how can that be fun? But like a puppy, he goes with what she likes anyway. And it turns out, the two actually enjoyed it. How bizarre. Well, if you're a kid, anything can be fascinating. When it is time for them to go back, she takes his hand, ignoring how her heart is beating so hard. They walk through the forest together and marvel at how big it is. The two are amazed by how beautiful the place is. Suddenly, Sirius notices something shining on a tree. When Elena goes near it, they discover that it's a locket necklace. Someone must have left it there. They open it, and the two are shocked by what they see. Inside the locket is a picture of a beautiful woman with a name engraved beside it, Stacy Blair. Suddenly, Elena sprints away from there, confusing Sirius, who has no choice but to follow. Elena swears that she knows that name. She runs and runs until she reaches the graveyard. She once again holds Sirius's hand and leads him somewhere. They eventually stop in front of a gravestone of a person named Stacy. She tells him that she is her mother. She talks about how her mother died after giving birth to her, and she has always thought that her mother was an orphan. There are rumors that she is an illegitimate child and that the Duke had had a scandal with a maid named Stacy. When she asks the Duke about her mother, he replies that she's an orphan, clearly not wanting her to continue asking questions. Looking at the picture now, she recognizes that these are the characteristics she knows about her mother because of the rumors. However, this person has a surname. Did her father lie to her about her mother being an orphan? She is taken out of her reverie when Sirius tells her that he thinks that is her mother because they look so similar, even poking her face good-naturedly. She blushes like a tomato because of this. She thinks that he is right. That woman is her mother. She wears the necklace, glad to finally have something of her. She then tells him about her plan to leave that place in order to find out more about her mother. He is surprised that she wants to leave, but when he sees how determined she is, he swears that he'll help her leave. Later on, the Duke comes home, and he has summoned his children and Sirius. To Courtney's annoyance, the Duke addressed them first, and even more unusual is that he is calling them by their name. He tells them that Viscount Dalton shall be their tutor. She is still contemplating the Duke's strange behavior when their father suddenly dismisses the children except for her. She is internally panicking, and she takes a long time to let go of Sirius's hand. What does he want with her? She is so scared of him that she can't even look up. To her surprise, he addresses her and acknowledges that she's had a hard time. Yeah, because of you, you good-for-nothing father. He tells her in such a condescending manner that he'll return to her what she deserves. He reaches to touch her face and tells her to come back to the mansion. Ugh! My hatred for this guy is like a rich person's credit card. It is limitless. Rather than saying anything, she flees, leaving her evil father behind. The Duke knows that it's going to be hard since he already expects her not to respond to his kindness instantly. But since he is still the father she knows, she will acknowledge him. His plan will go smoothly in the end. This arrogant man. Your handsome face will not save you if I decide to go in this novel myself and slap you in the face. Meanwhile, Elena is wide awake. She is already back in the mansion, and her room is benefiting someone who is the daughter of the Duke. To stop her endless train of thought, she goes outside to the living room only to see Sirius as well. Turns out, they both can't sleep. Sirius offers her a cup of milk and then promptly stares at her. She asks him what the deal is, and he answers that she looks really cute in her pajamas. Sirius just can't understand why he wants to hug her so much. The poor boy is confused and wonders if being cute makes someone want to hug them. Sirius thinks to himself that the Duke is making his kindness too obvious. It is a good thing that Elena also sees through his act. He is so deep in thought that he doesn't notice Elena calling him. He acknowledges her, so she begins talking about their upcoming lessons together. Elena is actually internally panicking. A lot of things are changing, and there are events she can't recall from the novel. She doesn't even remember a Viscount Dalton as a family tutor. She knows that even if she cares for Sirius, she has to stick to her plan. The two of them decide to sleep in the living room together. He even suggests that they go play camping there. Elena instantly agrees, and the two are moving to get blankets and pillows immediately. They eventually lay down, holding hands and facing the stars through the glass roof. Sirius turns to her and tells her that they should have camping games for real. He confesses that he is looking forward to be able to play with her. With a bright and hopeful expression, she agrees. Maybe, just maybe, Sirius won't throw her away no matter how useless she is. Elena finds Sirius at the garden, asking if he really has it. They then hurry to the reception room, where Elena waits patiently for her strawberry ice cream. When asked about what the Duke said, Elena sighs. 4 years ago, after the Duke abruptly changed his attitude, Elena was able to live as his daughter. Clearly, he provided her with only the finest quality items, and if she uttered a word, everything would be arranged for her. Surprisingly, the Duke treated her with an affectionate demeanor, as if he didn't acknowledge the fact that she had been abandoned for years or that she had once led a miserable life. Then one day, with a very sad expression, the Duke conveyed how much he treasures his only child, Elena. However, the aura she perceived with her golden eye suggested that the Duke was weary of her. I mean, it's not anything surprising. The Duke never felt sorry in the first place. Despite constantly receiving material objects and occasionally hearing nice things from him, Elena only feels uncomfortable. She notices that her cup is empty, and so she expresses her gratitude for the ice cream. It makes her feel alive now. However, as she looks at him, his face shows anger. She then gently holds his hand to assure him that the Duke isn't doing anything to harm her. Well, if he's just curious, then he should ask, just like he always does back then. But now he turns into a super picky teenager who hits puberty. Now that she thinks about it, he really has grown a lot, and by growing a lot, he has gotten so tall. She wonders why, especially if they just eat the same thing. Come on, Elena, guys do grow faster than girls. Sirius refuses to believe that, so Elena takes the opportunity to change the topic and stand back to back, measuring their height. Elena remembers the time where they both almost died. Elena couldn't believe that he had gotten taller and was the same height as her. She looked sad. She just wanted to enjoy the cute, tiny Sirius a little longer. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, bringing in the snacks for their homework. When the servant left, Sirius was about to eat the cookie, but Elena smacked his hand, telling him not to eat it. Without thinking, she helped Sirius again. That lady was a servant who came to the duchy to assassinate Sirius, and she wasn't mistaken. That woman looked like she was going to stab Sirius. Oh God, Elena was about to witness a murder. Elena's hands were shaking as she apologized for hitting his hand, but Sirius knew what kind of situation it was. A long time ago, he was poisoned too, but he survived, so the next thing that would happen was the assassination. He looked at her and asked if they were on the same side, to which she positively replied. He then smiled and told her to trust him, for he would never let anyone on his side get hurt. Elena believed him, but she's still worried about what the assassin might do to Sirius at that point. She tried hard to recall the contents of the novel, but Sirius's childhood was in the earliest part, and she didn't remember the exact description very well. The only thing she recalled was when Sirius was almost assassinated by a servant as ordered by the Emperor in Lauder's castle. One notable detail was that Sirius would have eaten cookies, as no one would have stopped him, just like he was now. Nevertheless, he survived the assassination. She didn't know how, but he'd probably emerged unscathed this time too. Sirius then instructed her to hide some cookies as if they had eaten them. She did just what she was told, hiding them under the sofa. Meanwhile, Sirius bought human-sized dolls to disguise them. He laid them down on the sofa and covered them with a blanket. Elena realized that he was so skilled at this that maybe he had done it many times before. Poor Sirius, he learned how to survive the hard way. They left the lights on as if they had fallen asleep after eating the cookies. Sirius led her to a cabinet and told her to stay there until he called her. He then closed the cabinet door and patiently waited in the room for the assassin to come in. Elena didn't know how much time had passed before the servant boldly opened the door and looked for them. In her hand, there was a knife. As soon as she uncovered the blanket, Sirius ran towards her and mumbled some ancient words. Suddenly, all the lights in the room flickered out. Elena couldn't see anything, but she could tell they were fighting because of the clashing attacks. All of a sudden, red and violet auras reached her feet, an unmistakable killing intent. She could clearly tell to whom it belonged. She knew it was useless to come out, but still, she wanted to help. So she opened the cabinet door, but the auras suddenly disappeared. Their emotions had calmed down too. She decided to take a look, thinking that she wouldn't be noticed if she stuck her head out a little bit. Dun, dun, dun. To her surprise, she screamed at the top of her lungs, coming face to face with a devilishly handsome face. Sirius stuttered, asking her to come out. He must have been really surprised too. The room was a mess, and the assassin was nowhere to be seen. With trembling hands, Sirius told her that the assassin fell out the window and that she might be dead. However, Elena could tell that he was lying. Bloodstains were on the floor, so the assassin didn't die by falling. Sirius had killed her in the room. Sirius's ability was openly known to everyone, so Elena couldn't figure out why he was lying. Still, Sirius continued to reason out, but Elena just held his hand and gave her thanks for protecting her. With his small body compared to the assassin's, he still managed to kill her and even wiped off the traces. Even though it was obviously a grotesque and creepy sight, no one could blame him for protecting both of them. Sirius suddenly hugs her, admitting that he was really scared. Is it because of the thought that she might leave him if found out that he just killed someone? Also, that time he wanted her to… Nope, Elena's too possessive to even tell us that. Come on, we're curious too. Back to the present, Elena clings to his arms, reminiscing how pretty cute he was back then. However, Sirius just shoves her arms away. As expected, she's been hitting walls like that lately. She asks for clarification if he really wants her to leave, but Sirius just tells her to do whatever she wants. Grumpy at how picky he is, Elena dashes out the door, leaving Sirius all blushing up. Hold on, what's the meaning of this? Is this why he's acting cold? Oh no, he's going really crazy for her. Whenever Elena behaves like that, he feels like his heart is about to burst. He's all aware of his feelings, but he can't just admit it. In his mind, it's obvious that his feelings won't be reciprocated, so it would be better if he didn't catch feelings for her. It all started from that day when the Duke gave him a special task. Rhodes was a vast and rich territory with many magic crystal veins. High-quality magic stones were an important source of income, but in return, they had to deal with the monsters that infested the area every winter. During his first year residing in the Rhodes Duchy, he had been joining the knights to subjugate the monsters that were on a different level than the ones back in the castle. And of course, he had proven his abilities with pride. The day was just a simple mission, and if there was anything special, it would have been when he saw Elena wearing his clothes that wouldn't fit him anymore. For some unknown reason, he couldn't take his eyes off of her. His heart was beating too loud. Since Elena was banned from going out so much, he also wondered why the Duke gave him the permission to take her outside the duchy. It was kind of embarrassing for him to ask for permission, but the Duke easily gave it. But for what purpose? Nevertheless, Elena was so happy to go outside. In the main gate, the knights greeted Sirius with utmost respect because he was still the prince of the empire. Meanwhile, Elena seemed to be distracted by the scenery outside, so Sirius had to remind her once again to focus. On their way, Sirius notices that the knights were blatantly looking at her. Elena's company was announced in advance, so it was understandable that all the knights were looking at her out of curiosity, but he somehow fell into a bad mood. Is this some kind of jealousy? He suddenly called out to the knight to not play or get distracted, and he also called out to Elena, saying that he'd catch a rabbit for her later, so all she must do was to be careful. Frankly, the atmosphere was much better than he thought. On the first day, they considered Elena's safety and just stuck to exploring only the safe areas so they could relax as well. The weather was quite warm, and some of them were overexcited. This time, Sirius only thought of Elena's happiness, thinking it would be a good memory for her. However, it suddenly rained, so he had no choice but to send one escort back together with Elena. Elena looked disappointed because she had high expectations for this outing, but she clearly understood what Sirius was trying to do. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound, but nobody else could hear it. He then asked Elena to ride the horse with him, and without hesitation, she did what she was told. With one hand on the horse's rein, his other hand wrapped around her waist, scared to leave her alone. He then instructed the knights to scatter in all directions when he'd give a signal. He closed his eyes to focus and felt the monster's attack. At that moment, the roots started sprouting from beneath the ground. As expected, the sound he felt earlier was the sound of the earth crying because of the devil underground. It was hard to focus on top of a horse that he was reacting to the shaking ground, but he managed to find his weakness. But the roots were shouting out in all directions, so it was impossible to approach. so his only option was to throw his sword, but he couldn't let go of the horse's rein nor his grip on Elena. However, he still chose to let go of his hand from her waist and grabbed his sword. There was only one chance. However, looking at her, he was confused if she could also see that thing. She was about to fall, but he quickly grabbed her as they fell into a steep slope. Oh no, is he going to find out her abilities? With a startled whinny, Sirius's trusty steed reared back, and its powerful kick abruptly sent him and Elena to the ground. Sirius swiftly rose, wearing a worried expression. He gently patted Elena and inquired about her well-being. She quickly stood up, cradling her head, and reassured him that she had only bumped it a little. Appearing fine, Elena astonished Sirius after their near-death experience. Concerned, Sirius asked once again if she was truly all right, emphasizing that she could let him know if she wasn't. Elena, somewhat surprised by his actions, reassured him, prompting him to leave immediately as rain began to fall once more. Under the tree, waiting for the rain to stop, they were grateful to find a quick refuge. Sirius, for the third time, asked if she had been hurt falling off the horse. She assured him that there was no scratch marks, and then about his well-being since he had hugged her during their tumble down the slope. A smile played on Elena's face, noting Sirius couldn't get hurt by the incident. Speechless, she pointed to Rhode's castle, visible from their location. Sirius claimed the terrain had changed, making the road impassable. Elena couldn't believe it was a big problem, now concerned about her luggage, but despite that, she still remained calm and just laughed about it. Seeing that she really looked fine, Sirius can't help but to be proud of himself. Being trusted by her made him feel so good. As Elena stretched her arms, finding it hard to leave, Sirius agreed, stating that hardships would become a memory. Elena surprised Sirius by making no response to his statement, leaving him believing she didn't care for his existence. Despite this, he believed they would always be together. Curious about Elena treating him as if he would go far away, Sirius abruptly told her not to forget their first night. Elena misunderstood, expressing excitement about staying out overnight for the first time. Sirius, realizing he lost his timing to get angry, pondered potential separation and its impact on his pride. Nonetheless, he reminded Elena not to forget him, promising the same in return. Holding her face, Sirius was surprised to find Elena's lips turning blue. He panicked, but Elena just smiled and said that she felt cold and sleepy. He wrapped his arms around her shoulders, encouraging her to rest against his sturdy chest. Even in the rain, Sirius's body temperature remained steady, thanks to his wolf blood. Hours later, the rain stopped and the sun set, lowering the temperature. He didn't mind the cold breeze or care if his temperature rose again. At this rate, Elena would be in danger. With his arm protectively draped over her shoulders, he needed to make sure that the warmth would disperse, but the problem was, his heart was racing so fast like it would explode any minute. Is he scared that this might blur the carefully drawn lines between them? Despite this, he cradled her tightly, ensuring the warmth lingered, the vulnerability on her sleeping face tugging at his heart. A battle raged within him, torn between conflicting desires. Hugging her was something he did countless times in their youth. However, he tried convincing himself there was no reason for him to feel that way. He hugged her tightly before her condition worsened, contemplating hugging her even tighter, yet fearing she'd wake up from the sound of his racing heart. Sirius didn't understand why he felt nervous. In fact, he hugged Elena to keep her warm. His cheeks flamed as he scolded himself, realizing it wasn't a big deal. Stop being in denial. He believed it wasn't the same as when they were children. A hug was nothing. However, he couldn't embrace Elena with pure affection. The tighter he held her, the more joy it brought him. Sirius thought it wasn't funny, contemplating Selena and feeling he had no place in her future. As soon as he realized it, he felt like he was being dumped. Contemplating Elena and feeling he had no place in her future. As soon as he realized it, he felt like he was being dumped. However, he believed he could hug Elena as he wanted, driven by the natural love that grew since their youth. He was uncertain about his feelings towards Selena, but had already decided that Elena was all he wanted, and she had to accept. Even in uncertainty, he didn't have a cold night that night, but had a fever in his forehead. A fever of first love. OMG, we definitely want more of this. After that night, Lady Elena couldn't stop thinking about what to do with Lord Sirius. She asked first if they could reconcile and didn't know if she had done something to upset him. Tears fell from the sadness she felt, wondering what was wrong with him. It wasn't the first time she couldn't understand Sirius. Lady Selena, with her perceptive golden eye, could read people's emotions, including Sirius's complex feelings. Spending time together outside mixed his pure and bright feelings with dark colors. She sensed negative emotions, anxiety, nervousness, worry, and tension gathered within him. Lady Elena couldn't help but think that Sirius intentionally made her feel bad every time they met. She believed they were friends when they were little, thinking he saw her as the only one on his side. Can I just bang their heads? They really misunderstood each other. At this point, I just want to force myself to enter the novel and shoot them with Cupid's arrow. Sirius changed, and she wondered what happened to him that day. No matter how hard she thought, she couldn't find any wrongdoing on her part. When she returned home after spending the night outside, she fell sick, and Sirius got a one-day fever. She felt bad that she couldn't see him. Afterward, Sirius never showed signs of disappointment and claimed that she thought he was really sad. She couldn't conclude that Sirius changed abruptly. Rather, puberty seemed to have struck him. She hoped it was just a phase of confusion, anticipating they would eventually return to their previous carefree relationship. Elena now thinks that she must have made a mistake, because if she was the one who prepared one's favorite ice cream, and that person didn't even answer her questions well, she would have been annoyed too. Anyway, she doesn't want their relationship to be strained over such a trivial argument. Given that, Sirius is not the protagonist who will destroy Louder in the future. They've been together for years because they are friends. Well, she didn't mean to be friends with him from the beginning, but what should she do when she's naturally infatuated? Although they would be dealing with separate paths in the future, she really has no choice but to get farther away. But right now, there's no need for that. And so she comes back to the room, seeing Sirius somehow sleeping on the sofa. I admit, he looks magnificently handsome even when he's sleeping. When asked if he's asleep, he immediately says no, still with his eyes closed. Just then, Elena joins him on the sofa, and as they stare at each other's eyes, they somehow feel safe and relaxed. They laugh, realizing how childish they were acting a while ago. Sirius apologizes first, but Elena's furious. He took the chance for her to apologize first. Elena unconsciously leans closer. Their faces bare inches apart, telling him that she has something to say. Suddenly, she can see that his aura is emitting that of embarrassment. So she moves away, thinking that she made a mistake again. Then she informs him that her father will be conducting an exam soon. As a successor of Rhode's dukedom, she should take the annual test from the age of 14. However, the Duke also told her that even if Sirius is not a candidate to succession, he should also participate too. The Duke can't clearly leave Sirius with infinite potential. He would want to test how far he can stand it, but Elena feels sorry for him. Although it is an arrangement to make the future look more splendid, Sirius's fate was harsh rather than pleasant, but Sirius somehow wants to do it. After all, to be the main character, one should be different no matter what. Also, Sirius notes that there will be more tests in the future, and he's not wrong about it. He once said that one day he wants to find his role in life and that it is to seek vengeance. Sirius is heading towards his original destiny, and he's making steady progress even now. He has the personality to be freed by having everything he wants. Even if Elena briefly intervenes in the orbit of Sirius's life, it's still a fact that won't change. And even if he doesn't tell her now, she already knows. There's no one in the world who knows him better than she does. Suddenly, Sirius changes the topic, asking why she keeps getting farther away. Before she can even respond, he grabs her hand, telling her that she's been becoming distant even when he's by her side all along. Oh God, how can we handle this situation with that kind of face he's showing? If I were Elena, my knees would wobble any moment now. Hearing Sirius ask her why she keeps distancing herself from him bewilders Elena, but she answers that it's only because the seat is so spacious. Rather than answering her, he merely closes his eyes. Still, even though she knows he is pretending to sleep, she snuggles closer to him like old times. She fondly recalls their time together as children. No matter how much he's changed, one thing remains. He is still incredibly stubborn. Another thing that she realizes is that her original plan of becoming as inconspicuous as possible has been completely ruined. Rather than being invisible, Sirius has noticed her even more, leading them to becoming the closest friends, as unlikely as it sounds. As much as she feared this would-be slayer before, she no longer does now. Presently, what she fears more is him leaving her behind as he continues his journey outside Rhodes. Since she won't be able to set her eyes on him in the future, she is determined to look at him now that she still can. Naturally, she notes just how handsome her best friend is. A fact that I agree so much with. No one is meant to look this good. She ends up staring at him so much that her face becomes as red as a tomato. Suddenly, Sirius speaks and questions if she likes his face. Elena is so embarrassed that she even tries to deny staring at him, earning an endless round of teasing and snickering from her unusually playful friend. Sirius is more than amused to see her this flustered. He has been long aware that she likes his face since childhood. He often catches her muttering how cute he is. Now he is glad that he is growing to be according to her taste. Oh, Elena, you ought to have been more subtle about your fangirling. He then shifts the conversation back to the upcoming test. He tells her that he wants to have a wish if he survives. He looks embarrassed while Elena is confused about what he possibly wants from her. When she asks him what it is, he refuses to tell her at that moment, but assures her that it's something she can do. Despite her reluctance, Elena still agrees to grant him a wish if he returns safely, making Sirius incredibly happy. As the test grows near, so does Elena's confusion. For some reason, she's the only one who is not pressured into preparing for it. There have also been speculations that she will not even be taking it due to the Duke's affection for her. Currently, she is speculating about the events in the duchy while playing the piano when someone comes to see her. It's Joseph. At 17, he is as handsome as one can be, but he is as unpleasant as ever. He challenges her to play a song, but she refuses, knowing that he'll only evaluate how she plays. Her maid offers to bring her breakfast, but Joseph orders that she bring it later since he wants to talk to Elena. Annoyed, she points out that he ought to be busy for the upcoming test, but he merely sits down and claims that she is more important since they are siblings. He even encourages her to call him brother. She asks him why he's really there, and he forcefully replies that he's trying to be an older brother. He tells her to sit next to him, and seeing their position, anyone would think that they're close. He leans in closer and whispers a warning. He tells her not to stand out for the next week. Elena knows that he's giving her real advice, but she is surprised when he adds that she should not stick around Sirius as much. When she tries to ask why, he argues that she just listened to her brother. He also tells her to stay away from Courtney. Elena has long been aware of Courtney's hostility, and she has always been careful around her. Ever since her situation in the duchy has changed, her siblings have been riddled with jealousy. Out of the two, Joseph has been the easiest to deal with. Even though he is openly jealous of their father's favoritism, there's been a growing camaraderie between them. She teases him for caring so much for her, causing him to turn red and deny her oh-so-offensive accusation. Oh, no need to be embarrassed. We know you just care for your sister Joseph, even though you can be a jerk sometimes. Elena is more than amused to see her brother so flustered, for she only meant to make fun of her beloved older brother. She can clearly see his emotions floating all around him. It's true that their relationship has changed. It's all because of the time that Sirius beat him so badly. She forgave her brother for bullying her. Ever since then, he often visits her like this, trying to be a brother to her. Elena attempts to ask him why he wants her to avoid Sirius, but he merely replies that Courtney dislikes it when the two of them hang out. Elena knows that he is lying, for she can clearly see his emotions all around him. However, she knows that she can't push him, otherwise he will leave. Joseph will turn 20 soon, and in the Hyperion Empire, this age is a mark of maturity. Courtney is yet to be recognized by the Duke as an adult until she reaches 20 years old. Their older sister has been thirsting for the Duke's recognition. For now, her plan is to stay away from Courtney's path for a week. After all, what else can she do? The Duke has forbidden her from learning swordsmanship. She didn't even develop a tolerance for poison. Now that she thinks about it, all these seem kinda weird to begin with. After hearing her plan, Joseph wants to know what she'll do about Sirius. Elena refuses to decide anything unless she hears the real reason. When he fails to convince her, he gets annoyed and tells her to do what she wants. Before he leaves, he warns her once again to stay away from Sirius. Unfortunately, someone else hears his words. Seeing Sirius standing behind her babbling brother freezes Elena in shock. Suddenly, an ominous hand lands on Joseph's shoulder. He turns around to see Sirius with a terrifying look on his face. He is clearly not pleased with what he just heard. The siblings begin frantically explaining the situation, but Sirius's hand on Joseph's shoulder does not let up. His grip is so strong that Joseph thinks that he's trying to kill him. He looks at his sister for help as Elena tries to calm Sirius down. She tries to free Joseph from Sirius's grip and convinces him to have a conversation so she can explain everything. Miraculously, or rather predictably, Sirius does as she says. No matter how angry our guy is, he will always be love-struck for our Elena. When Elena manages to make Sirius sit down, Joseph takes this as a golden opportunity to flee, much to Elena's annoyance. Sirius attempts to come after him, so Elena has no choice but to pin him down. This is so hilarious. No matter how much drama they have, they sure can act like chaotic teenagers. Elena shouts for Joseph to run and leave Sirius's tantrums to her, but instead, Joseph pauses to look at her with a strange expression. Doesn't he think that their sibling relationship is strong enough for her to protect him from Sirius's wrath? However, she tries to convince herself that she is not actually doing this for her mostly unpleasant brother. She then tells him not to die in the test and come back. Joseph is shocked, but condescendingly declares that he'll win no matter what before fleeing as fast as he can. Come on, you two. Just admit that you care for one another. She is contemplating just how stupid her brother is when she realizes that Sirius is still lying under her. She quickly leans away, apologizing profusely. But rather than being enraged like she thought he'd be, he looks incredibly embarrassed instead. You can mistake him for a tomato for how red he is. She tries to apologize on behalf of Joseph, but Sirius is still not reacting the way she expects. He replies that he gets it without even glancing at her. She attempts to clear up the misunderstanding once again, but he stands up, saying that they'll talk later. Elena, despite her ability to see emotions, is left confused. The next day, Elena is more than annoyed that Sirius is avoiding her. His behavior infuriates her. Refusing not to let him win, she goes around looking for him. She then bumps into the apparent source of all this misunderstanding, her brother. She learns that Sirius is not in training. Joseph then tells her to listen to his warning and stay in her room so as not to risk bumping into Courtney. She can't ignore his words indeed, so she decides to wait in her room for Sirius. After all, their rooms are next to each other, so he certainly can't avoid her forever. However, as she nears the rooms, she notices someone waiting outside her room. She quickly realizes that the person is actually Sirius, wearing the most melancholic of expressions. He asks if they can talk, so she allows him to enter her drawing room. She then starts questioning him for avoiding her, but she quickly learns that she can't stay angry at him for long. It's so funny how weak her resolve is when it comes to him. But then again, we can't blame her for when Sirius literally has puppy eyes. When he finally speaks, he does so in a flustered manner. He explains that he does not know how to face her, so he blindly runs away. Confused, she asks him why he can't do so. She even assumes that he did something wrong. When he does not answer, she tells him it's okay since he came to see her anyway. She confesses how she hates it when he avoids her. But he sadly replies that he'll only be more sorry if she forgives him. Elena becomes even more confused, lamenting how complicated Sirius can get. She is pretty adept when it comes to emotions, but she can't even grasp Sirius's feelings, who is the closest to her. She tries to make him speak again, but he denies having anything to say to her instead. But she clearly sees the emotions bursting out around him. How can he lie like that without flinching? She questions if he's dissatisfied somehow, but rather than taking her seriously, he ruffles her hair and declares her too cute for him to be dissatisfied. Suddenly, Sirius asks about how people in Rhodes are able to see emotions. He is curious whether she has the ability as well. Elena then remembers that she is hiding from Sirius as well. She has no intention of broadcasting her abilities to others. After all, he will probably not take it well once he knows that she can see people's emotions. Seeing her deep in thought, Sirius grabs her attention and apologizes for making her feel like a freeloader. He continues his litany in order to gain her forgiveness, but before he can finish, she beams at him. She tells him not to worry and that next time, he should tell her directly what she did wrong, assuring him that she's already forgiven him. They are suddenly interrupted when they are informed that the Duke wants to see Elena. Oh no, that evil Duke ruins the moment! That is how she ends up sitting next to her anxious older brother moments later. Joseph is complaining in no time about having to wait this long. Both of them apparently rushed out when they heard that their father had something to say. Elena has a bad feeling about all of this, especially since she can see the intense flowing emotions coming from the door. Soon after, Courtney angrily whips the door open to summon them inside. Courtney seriously needs an attitude adjustment. I mean, how can a person be so angry all the time? The siblings are now standing before their evil father. Both Elena and Joseph are still pretty much confused as to why they are there, while Courtney is practically seething in anger. Soon, they learn why they're there, and it isn't anything but pleasant. The Duke wants the two of them to take the same test that Courtney is taking, and it is anything but pleasant. The Duke wants the two of them to take the same test that Courtney is taking, the last test before a person can be fully pledged adult. Usually, Joseph is supposed to take an entirely different test, while Elena is exempted from it altogether. Now the Duke wants all of them to pluck a deep yellow branch from the golden field. The person who doesn't manage to obtain a branch by the end of the week will have to stay there forever. The Duke is certainly getting a sadistic sort of glee seeing his children in utter disarray. Seeing the usually stoic Elena so fearful makes him feel so utterly in control of her. My God! No words can describe just how I hate this guy. The Duke then announces that whoever passes the test with the best performance will be his next successor. After that, Courtney straight out attacks Elena. She accuses her of knowing all of these beforehand, since everyone has been saying that her father actually wants Elena to be his heir. Courtney is practically unhinged at this point. At first, she tries to convince herself that their father's favoritism towards Elena means nothing if she still gets to be his heir. After all, she does not seek his affection, but the power to oppress people. Girl, you better calm down. This kind of evilness is uncalled for. However, when the Duke does not even do anything to stop the rumor from spreading, she starts thinking that it all may be true, speculating that Elena has known this all along, spreading the rumors purposely. Courtney uses her arm to choke Elena, a testament to how different they are in strength. What a bully! She continues to blame Elena for sticking close to Sirius. She figures that if she was the only one who became close to him, then the position might have been hers. Courtney now uses her hands to choke Elena, shouting that if she was not there, that position should have been hers. Now caught in Courtney's unreasonable rage, there's only one thing left to do, and that is to poke her sister's eye with her fingers. As comical as it sounds, it actually works. After managing to destabilize Courtney, she pushes her off and runs as fast as she can. She knows that she'll catch up to her soon enough, but she can't scream for help because her voice refuses to come out. To make matters worse, she trips and is about to fall to the ground. Thankfully, an arm catches her, and it belongs to no other than Sirius. Seeing her state, Sirius quickly fusses over her. The moment he sees the bruise forming around her neck, Sirius grits his teeth in anger. He snaps and is more than ready to seek revenge in her stead. However, Elena clings to his clothes and cries out loud. The tears flowing down her cheeks stop his rage, and he chooses to comfort her instead. Elena begins to tearfully say how much she hates her situation. She confesses that she hates this place the most. The Rhodes is what causes all her suffering, and all she wants to do is get out of there. She eventually calms down in Sirius's presence. Sirius is still angered, though, and he regrets not coming sooner. However, the most important thing right now is to make sure this doesn't happen again. He assures Elena that he won't let Courtney near her again. However, she tells him that there is a much bigger problem ahead. She informs him that the Duke intends for her to compete with her siblings to be the successor. This technically means that her father wants her to die since she was never raised like her siblings. She doesn't have the skills to survive the mission of obtaining a branch from the yellow trees. The Golden Field is a place filled with leafless trees and rugged mountains with the famous deep yellow trees at its center. The place is filled with the most dangerous monsters, and even a large order of knights will have difficulty moving inside it. It does not bode well for Sirius that the Duke is intending to send Elena to such a place. However, he encourages her. When he hears her say that she can't do anything, he praises her for being intelligent and being able to defend herself from Courtney. Most especially, she is best when it comes to standing by his side. Oh, come on, Sirius, no need to be so charming. He tells her that the most important thing she can do right now is to stay with him. He then vows that he will accompany her in doing her task. 3 days ago, the Duke discussed something with Sirius. He informed him that he would be excluded from the successor's test. The Duke explained that there was no reason for him to take it in the first place because he has no blood relation with Rhodes. However, the Duke implied that there was another way for him to be part of the family. Sirius pretended to not understand what he meant, but this only amused the Duke. He directly asked him if he wanted Elena. Sirius was enraged that the Duke managed to catch on his feelings, even though Elena herself was not aware of it. However, he knew that the Duke, who only ever had dark feelings, could never understand what he felt for Elena. It was never simply about wanting her. It was because he liked her that he wanted her. No, Sirius is so smitten with Elena. I hope these two manage to escape the fangs of this snake of a Duke. The Duke then told him that he had to do something for him if he wanted to have Elena. Sirius already expected this since he knew that he wanted to gain something. The Duke informed him of the test that his children would go through involving the deep yellow tree branch. Sirius was beyond horrified to learn that the Duke intended to involve Elena in the dangerous task. The Duke raised her to be weak and helpless, almost as if he wanted her to be a mere ornamental flower. Just how would Elena survive? He had to go with her. That was when he realized that the Duke wanted him to do exactly that. He wanted him to go to Elena directly and tell her that he wanted to follow her. However, he was not allowed to carry out her assignment for her. Instead, he had a different task entirely. The Duke explained that there was once a gem that belonged to the Rhodes that went missing. It was believed that it was lost in the Golden Field, so his task was to find it and bring it to him. The Duke then reminds him not to tell anyone about their conversation. He then promised that if Sirius was able to complete the deed, he would grant him one wish, whatever it was. When the Duke was alone in his study, he amused that Sirius easily became desperate when Elena was involved. He then recalled how he accidentally learned about the existence of the gem. One night, he suddenly thought about Elena's real father. He took out the family tree book of the Dukes of Rhodes, and he couldn't help but laugh at his brother's foolishness. Linus had removed his name from the tree and erased all traces of himself. He was annoyed at himself for doing something so useless, so he flipped the pages rather harshly. That was when he came across a note hidden between the pages. It contained the story written about the gem that allowed the Rhodes family to possess golden eyes. The very reason why the Rhodes family has the power to peer through emotions, why they possess, or used to for that matter, their trademark golden eyes, was solely being kept in the golden jewels that lie at the golden fields. The note that the Duke found also mentions something about approaching a golden tree, wherein you will be greeted by a mass of golden leaves. It also outlined how perhaps the writer had written a warning about the previous Rhodes, ignoring the fate that they have to be one with it, and about them getting lost and overtaken by the power of the tear-like Rhodes jewel. Unfortunately, the paper the note was written on is incomplete, damaged, and torn. Not that the Duke cared, though. He already had what he wanted. He looks a little bit too crazy, if you ask me. He is confident that one little clue is enough for Sirius to find the jewel, and it gets him thinking about the man carrying the blood of Hyperion. Ever since the Hyperion Empire arose, the Rhodes family has been on a steady decline from power, up to the point where they had no proper heirs with golden eyes. That's why he's now using a descendant of that empire to retrieve the jewel in hopes of restoring power to his family. But even that's not enough. If all goes well, the Duke plans to have Elena and Sirius marry so that he'll have the very thing that can control the blood of the wolf. His daughter, who he calls his faithful dog. Disgusting. He's not even trying to hide his malice anymore. Meanwhile, Elena finds herself a little bit out of sorts because the successor's test is finally beginning. Yet in the midst of all the commotion, a familiar but quarreling tone finds Elena. Joseph, there to participate as well, comes to his sister mainly to talk about whether she's really going to take the test with Sirius in tow. She confirms that she is, and if it was a foul against the test, her father would have eliminated her already. Joseph can't really argue about it anyway, as he himself has made a pact with Courtney to team up until the tree leaves turn moderately yellow. Although Elena praises the idea, she also thinks that their cooperation wouldn't last long, and that there's a great chance either one would betray the other. And so, she warns Joseph about it regardless. Their conversation is cut short, however, when the two notice Sirius standing right behind Joseph, making the latter leave after saying good luck to the two of them. They were amazed at Joseph's growth, though. Before, he would awkwardly leave at the sight of Sirius. Anyway, with the test starting, the Duke decides to meet with his children. He talks to Courtney first, but he mainly thinks about how she's become too complacent because he had chosen her early on, but now has become a disappointment. Though her main mistake was that she showed him resistance too soon. Next, he talks to Joseph, but when it comes to Elena, he caresses her cheeks, saying he hopes she'll return without harm, all while thinking she's the path to his planned success. Sirius disembarks on the carriage first and stretches as soon as his feet hit the ground. Well, admittedly, traveling makes the fierce warrior sick, which is kinda ironic considering the things Sirius can stomach. Apparently, according to Elena, they have been riding for about half a day without any trouble. But since they've stopped, they have now without a doubt reached the point in the forest where the test will start. Still, Elena doesn't feel a tiny bit nervous since Sirius is there. As if on cue, the man asks her to check her equipment, which she does, grasping the dagger and the necklace from her mother, which she's very sentimental towards. Sirius insists more on the dagger, though, just in case. They were then given a map, even Sirius, marking the beginning of the test. They were to return after 1 week, and not within that time period. There's no rules after that, not even against attacking each other. Both Courtney and Joseph had already made their way through, and so Elena looked to Sirius, who was strategic enough to suggest that they plan the route ahead first. The two decide to cross the mountain first, for both time and safety reasons, as the path likely doesn't contain that many devils, unlike the forest itself. It will take a day, so Elena suggests they travel quickly and take a rest on the first day. With that, Sirius theorizes that they should reach the Golden Fields on the 4th day of travel. He does, however, wonder why they named a spot in the Golden Fields as the center, when based on the map, it is on the mountainside. Anyhow, Sirius offers his hand to Elena, making the latter blush and think about how he hasn't done so in a while. And so begins their flirtatious first day, and I truly mean flirtatious. Spurred by Sirius's sweetness, Elena vows to attend to all his needs, except fighting, that is, on their journey. He comments how she just offered to be his slave, but Elena jokingly retorts that it's more like motherhood. He doesn't get it though, and instead takes offense by saying it's weird. Elena notices her mistake and immediately offers to care for him as her husband. Sirius merely responds that it's not bad as a last-minute excuse. At least his anger died down. Know your partner before making jokes, people. Otherwise, you'd be put in an awkward situation like silly Elena. Anyhow, the two make camp as soon as nightfall, and Sirius, though relieved no trouble came on the first day, knows there will be further on their journey. Still, he gets distracted as he looks at Elena sleeping, the sight of which makes him smile, so he chastises himself for letting his guard down. Suddenly, Elena wakes up and asks why he isn't sleeping yet. Sirius reminds the barely awake Elena that they have already agreed to take turns for the night watch task, and Elena, still with her eyes closed, tries to promise she'll wake up early, but the prince cuts her off and says it's not even time to change yet. He bids her to sleep some more, and she agrees, though not before making him promise that he'll wake her up when it's her turn. Elena promptly goes back to sleep, much to Sirius's relief. Actually, it's been a long time since they were supposed to change duties, but Sirius had no intention of letting her know. In fact, he's more concerned that he almost got caught anyway. Expectedly, when the morning came, Elena isn't thrilled when she finds Sirius did not fulfill his promise of waking her up. He reasons that he wasn't feeling tired, and the two start to argue about him having enough sleep. Unfortunately for Elena, she gets distracted so much by how handsome Sirius looks. It truly isn't fair how a man who hasn't slept all night still looks that good. Not that Elena has a problem with that too. In the midst of all her gushing about Sirius, a somber and sad thought crosses her mind. As she looks at her companion, she wonders whether or not Sirius will remember today in the distant future. Elena admits how nice spending time like this with him is, but if she's the only one who gets to remember it, she figures it'll only bring her loneliness. In fact, it's bringing her sadness right now. Her thoughts are interrupted, however, when Sirius sheepishly asks if they still have food for breakfast, snapping the poor girl back to reality and back to what she's cooking. Despite being distracted, Elena still makes a delicious meal out of it, but Sirius notices something off about her nonetheless. When she suggests that they should plot out their route first by her climbing a tall tree, Sirius thinks she's been mulling over how to be helpful for the both of them, which brings a smile on his face. Poor innocent Sirius, if you only knew. And so Sirius agrees to her plan wholeheartedly, even saying it was a great plan. However, what the two couldn't agree on was who would climb the tree. Still, after a cute argument where Elena compares her tree climbing skills to that of a squirrel, and a little recounting of their childhood days, Sirius eventually relents to let Elena be the climber. But what surprises her the most when she's on top of the forest canopy are the large number of auras generated by emotions, when supposedly only devils and monsters live there. That's when the daunting realization occurs to her that perhaps monsters have emotions too. Elena finds herself at a loss for words when she sees the auras from supposedly a monster's emotions. Still bewildered by the fact even though she hadn't read about it, she decides to make use of this recent discovery. She descends the tree to the waiting Sirius, who asks her if she saw anything they should avoid. Indeed she did, Sirius. Elena asks for the map, and she marks where she estimates all the auras she saw were coming from. If they were to trek the forest safely, then the path avoiding them would be the best route if they were indeed emotional auras from monsters. The girl smiles as she bids her companion to continue the journey, proud that at the very least, she can be useful to Sirius. And her efforts prove to bear fruit, as a little while later, the two arrive at their designated second campsite, with the sun not even setting yet, much to Sirius's shock. In fact, judging by the looks of the trees beyond, he estimates that they're close to the center of the forest, meaning that they should have encountered lots of high-level monsters right now. But they didn't, and that makes the blood of the wolf extremely wary, even questioning how suspicious their luck has been so far. He's understandably paranoid, being a seasoned warrior that he is, but it isn't luck, it's Elena's intuition. Not that the poor boy knows though, since Elena didn't admit it anyway. And so Elena tries to make Sirius see the positive side of things, attributing their recent luck to having days where things go your way. Besides, it's good that they get to save energy regardless. The man agrees, making Elena breathe a sigh of relief. It seems like her excuse worked all right. Next, she notices Sirius plopping down on the base of a tree without a word. She asks him if he's tired, to which he answers yes. Elena then offers to unpack their things, but Sirius just leans on her and closes his eyes. They have a little bit of cute banter, but ultimately they rest together underneath the tree's shade. And they look so cute together. Afterwards, during the next leg of their journey, it seems that monsters are becoming more and more frequent, leading Sirius to take care of them while letting Elena hide. Despite her powers, avoiding monsters seems impossible this deep in the forest. Suddenly, another aura appears with a different hue from the rest. Theorizing it may be from Joseph or worse, Courtney, Elena asks Sirius to hide with her. They did find that it was Joseph, but what's curious is that he seems to be walking away from the center of the forest, making them think he's giving up. And so they rush to him, but Joseph instead says he didn't expect to meet them there, making them think his fate is at play. Addressing Sirius by his royal title says that he has something to deliver to him. Joseph and Courtney cemented their pact long before the test, agreeing to cooperate until the third day. Joseph also recounts how it made it easy fighting monsters with his sister watching his back, but he couldn't even sleep well during nights, afraid of the possibility of betrayal. A fear that would soon be realized. During their second day together, Courtney finally reveals her true allies, most of whom were wearing blacked-out garments and face masks. By the looks of them, Joseph correctly deduces that they were outsiders if they needed to hide their faces. There's no rule against that, but what's alarming is the implication it has on the family. By aligning with outsiders now, Courtney has placed herself in debt in the future. What could she possibly gain for doing so? Come on, Courtney! Joseph falls silent, much to Courtney's musing. But in actuality, he's trying to hide his true emotions because his sister can only read intense emotions. He tries to play nice, and Courtney even agrees to honor their previous agreement by letting him stay with her until the third day. Seeing as how most of her allies are assassins or even knights, Joseph is left with no choice. He tries to sweet-talk Courtney, which eventually leads her to carelessly talk, even spilling her plans to him. A plan which, upon hearing it, makes Joseph immediately set out to find Sirius in particular, calling it the fake wolf hunt strategy. Joseph reveals Courtney's target is the prince all along. Still, on the bright side, at least Joseph's character development is going well. Anyway, just by how Courtney used the phrase fake wolf, the man correctly deduces that she's now in league with the Emperor himself, seeing as it's the same thing he uses to discredit Sirius's royal birth. Elena is bewildered at Courtney's blindness, but Joseph reveals that their sister right now is so consumed by vile emotions that she can't even think of the consequences that will arise from her actions. It's a little bit shocking how far the eldest born Rhodes has fallen. Regardless, Joseph doesn't think he would encounter Elena and Sirius that quickly. Actually, Elena found him through his emotional aura, so he expresses relief for being indirectly saved. Still, he has to get back to the mansion to warn their father of Courtney's new alliance, fearing the family might fall into the clutches of the Emperor. Sirius, however, seems intent on striking the first blow against his attackers, reasoning that the problem should be taken care of at the earliest. Joseph takes this as a sign that he will go back with Elena. But actually, the two men get into a deep talk regarding this, which only makes Elena saddened that she's now become a burden. Suddenly, Sirius calls to her, asking if she'd consider staying with him because they make a great team. Immediately, the smile returned to her face. So cute. Please be officially a couple already! Anyway, it seems Sirius's reasons for fighting are not all that he said. Knowing Courtney would eliminate Elena if she's allowed to win the test is reason enough for him. A confused Elena can only repeat when Sirius says he plans to use the monsters. Despite the dangers a plan like that presents, it seems the two are left with no choice. On the way to their current spot as they move to the center of the forest, they've already encountered some of the assassins, and Sirius had to dispose of them. However, that means that they've also figured out the way he fights and can better select fighters suitable to attack him. Elena knows this to be true because she can feel all the emotions that were scattered before now grouping themselves and moving as one. Seeing as how the monsters aren't on either side, they can use them to their advantage. Still, it seems Elena's face can't hide how worried she feels. And so Sirius assures her not to fret too much. But out of the blue, Elena grabs him by the face to tell him how stupid he is because she's actually concerned about him, not about the plan itself. These two just never fail to be sweet regardless of the situation. But more than that, and more than Sirius's blushing but happy face that she's still holding, Elena reveals that what worries her the most is the fact that there's not even a single shred of emotion coming from Sirius when he kills. She gets hurt thinking about all the things Sirius had to go through to get used to that, not to mention having a sibling that's constantly trying to kill him. Sirius, on the other hand, doesn't even notice it, since he's still pressed on being flirtatious as ever. He promises he can defeat all the enemies because he's there with Elena. And being with his partner means he gets to be a lot stronger. I mean, there's a time and a place for flirting, but who am I to judge someone shooting their shot? It still had the desired effect of making Elena blush anyway. Moving on, the two enact their plan, with Elena finding monsters, Sirius annoying them, and then luring it to their assassins. Sirius seems to notice how accurate Elena is when pinpointing monsters, yet he doesn't pry about it, making the girl cherish the thought that he trusts her completely. Anyhow, their plan worked, and their attackers, after being picked off, are now arguing with each other. The two, who were observing the group quarrel, tried to get a closer look, but unfortunately, they lost track of them. And that's when the enemy sprung its trap. They turned Sirius' strategy against them. Both he and Elena have no choice but to flee, so he carries her until they've been cornered near a cliff. The enemy decides to make themselves known, particularly a knight that is the right-hand man of the Emperor who has known Sirius since childhood. This leaves him stricken with a memory of the past. But with his sword ready, he proclaims he isn't the same helpless child back then. The heir to Blood of the Wolf readies his sword against the Emperor's right-hand man, who mocks him for not surrendering. In a flash, the would-be assassin jumps through the air, promising another lesson to His Highness. It seems Sirius is in for a fight. Will he be able to come through for him and Elena? For now, it seems he can, as he swiftly blocks the opponent's sword with his. With an air of darkness covering his once handsome face, Sirius asks Elena to close her eyes in order to avert her gaze from the violence. He promises to end it all quickly. However, Elena seems to have something troubling her too. She collects her thoughts and immediately notices the number of auras with murderous intent doesn't match that of the number of assassins present. That's when she notices tons of archers waiting in ambush, and so she immediately shouts a warning to Sirius about it. A couple that's good in love and even great in battles, I love it. Unfortunately, the enemy knows that they're wise to the plan, something they couldn't believe Elena of all people could see through, and so the enemy knights order the entire group of archers to fire all their arrows at once. Sirius immediately abandons the thought of fighting and tightens his grip on Elena as he carries her while jumping down the waterfall cliff. The enemies elected not to give chase, as to their amusement and to Elena's horror, Sirius got hit with a poison arrow as he protected his love. Oh no, you gotta pull through against this, Sirius! Elena can't help but shudder, thinking of how even though Sirius survived poisoning before, it's never been through a poison arrow. She seems to be losing hope, when in the last second she urges herself to do all she possibly can. That's it, Elena, you be strong for the both of you, girl! She hopes Sirius isn't injured enough, so she elects to hide in a crevice near the waterfall. Inside the cave, she finds a bright glowing stone of yellow light. Elena touches it, but is shocked to find her hand passes through it, and so she brings the two of them towards it and finds that it's the magic entrance to the real Golden Fields. She found it after all that! She's got no time to be amazed, though, as Elena immediately sets out trying to cure Sirius. We'll stop here for today, guys. Yes, I know you want more. Don't forget to ask for the next part in the comment section. Thank you guys for watching and for your support. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Till the next one.